I've been in business as long as I can remember. When I was a kid, I had a gift wrapping business. I think I was about 10, and I think I overestimated the market with my parents and my sister, and then just kind of been an evolution from there with cutting grass, and then I was detailing cars in high school, and that was my time in high school was right when it was the kind of the first evolution of the internet going on, and there's all these .com billionaires being made on paper overnight, and then Napster and the whole deal. So I kind of thought that that was my path with computers. I had my degrees in computer science, and then I just kind of evolved from there, and then went to school. And I've, just as long as I can remember, I've always been pursuing things, and I worked with my parents' company for 11 years after college, kind of all the while buying things on the side and trying to grow that side business into a primary business, knowing that was always my end goal. And then finally, about 2 years ago, I got into the earbud business and just kind of, what's the right word, reacted as the market did to growing into what it is today, with first selling on eBay, then Amazon Prime, then noticing that schools were the primary buyer, so marketing directly to schools, and continually growing that. The market is just so vast with schools, and with a lot of testing and the technology advances, they're almost being forced to buy this, so it's a built-in market that's taxpayer funded. So it's a really great place to be in right now, and business is growing fast, about 87% growth over this time last year, and I expect next year to be just about as strong as it is now.
So Tyler, tell me how earbuds. I mean, how did that come about? Like, what spurred that? You saw something? Somebody mentioned. I always find these ideas to be fascinating. How did that actually happen?
That is interesting. I get asked that.
Well, he's going to be on a lot of podcasts, so he's going to have to give it over and over
Yeah.
and over again. So this is good practice.
Great.
It is very good for whatever reason now. Okay, so Tyler, talk about how you actually became an entrepreneur.
How I became an entrepreneur, I think I was before I really even realized what the term was. I always enjoyed the concept, knowing that as I got older and realized that that was what a lot of people could do if they were so inclined or had the skill and ability to execute it. Then I grew from there and always wanted to find things to buy and sell, and working at my parents' business for 11 years, I got really good at buying and sourcing things from different places around the world. And then when there were things that I'd come across kind of by coincidence on those channels, and I would buy some and sell them on eBay on the side for extra money. And then that was the starting of my path. And then one thing led to the next, and I got into earbuds, and then Amazon Prime is when sales really first exploded on Prime, and then trying to siphon off the main school customers, and that led me to where I am today.
So earbuds, how did you actually get into the earbud? You know, I know a lot of people get inspired by a picture, or they have a conversation. So how did that actually come about?
I can't say I ever set out to be where I am with earbuds. It was all kind of cause and effect. When I would buy these things, whether it be power supplies, or little audio cables, things like that, I'd buy in bulk from these factories overseas, and then sell them off at one time in the same kind of process, trial and error. I got the earbuds, and then they sold okay individually. Then as trial and error again, I tried them in bulk, not realizing how ripe and raw that market really was, selling 100 pack at a time, because people that needed those, or the different kinds of people that need one, and then really hitting my stride in the bulk market. And then again, realizing when they started selling well on Amazon, I was looking through at what the different customers were, and a lot of them were schools. So then I started thinking, I'll cut out the middleman and their significant commission, start trying to market to schools directly, and that had a lot of success. And then just going from there, and reactionary, and now have 12 different color options that was reactionary because people would check sometimes what kind of colors you have, and whether it's school colors or different colors per group or grade. They really seem to like that for, I'm not exactly sure why, but they ask about that a lot. So again, a reaction thing. So it's never really out to be my intent
Sure.
with earbuds. It's just kind of where I ended up at by realizing opportunity. And what do they say in poker? When you have the best hand, you go all in.
Right.
So I'm all in on earbuds, big and hard.
I have seen one of your podcasts or your video blogs about I believe you said black is the most popular color
By far
right
the
now.
most popular
By
color,
far,
yeah.
And tell our listeners about your typical day, because I've seen it on the video blog where you have those little time markers go. But tell them about your typical day.
My typical day, and to put it in context, I do work from home out of my finished basement. I have 2 young kids, a little girl that's 4, a little boy that's 2. So I used to get up earlier, which was 4:45, but that was really getting taxing, so now I push it to 5:15. But I'll get up and I'll typically work downstairs for a while, and that's good because the kids are still asleep, my wife's still asleep, it's extra quiet, my mind's fresh. So a lot of that is emails, things that are a little more mentally intensive, maybe some strategizing stuff, catching up on what happened overnight. After that, I will often make breakfast for the kids, help get the kids ready for school once everybody wakes up. I tend to take them to school, my wife picks them up. During the day I work a lot and I document the whole thing. I brought in my first employee back in May, and he took over a lot of that because so much of my time was consumed when I get these shipments in and then pretty much rebox and label, send them off to Amazon warehouses, which was taking up hours and hours every day. And I kind of realized that was the part that I could compartmentalize pretty well, to bring in someone to do that, to free me up again for larger visions. And then, let's see, typical day, and then my wife picks up the kids about 4 or so. Typical dinner, kids, things. I try to be as best of an active husband and dad as I can. I think it's the competitive nature of me. I find myself trying to kind of outdo other husbands
Sure.
and other parents along the way, and I think that's the useful byproduct of my competitiveness. Is I look around, people around me think I would be the best dad out of all these guys that I
Sure.
see, and they're getting home at 6 and watching Game of Thrones all night, and that's just not my cup of tea. And then kids go to bed, I'm in bed, we're asleep around 9 to 10, then start the whole routine over again. And now I'm 135 episodes in, and this is kind of part of the routine, what I do throughout the day. I document right now. There's Ben, my teammate here, videoing this whole thing, probably strip out audio for our podcast or who knows what later on. And to document the whole thing to give some kind of value to people, because I think a lot of people with the rise of Instagram and a lot of these things, it's always some guy with like a Lamborghini on each side and like 8 bikini-clad women behind him throwing out $100 bills.
Right.
And that is not reality for the vast majority of any business owner. It's hard work, it's a daily grind, it's rarely being off the clock, and you work a lot. Because the one thing I noticed quite quickly, I'm about 2 years self-employed, and I realized very quickly when every dollar was into or out of your pocket, it really molds how you spend your time.
Yes, I agree with that. A lot of people look at these business owners and making a lot of money, and they're oftentimes jealous and envious, but they do not see all the hard work that goes into that.
Yes.
I tell people you really need to find something in your life that you really can not consider work. A lot of times people look at me and they say, well, you seem to be tied to your phone, or you seem to be always returning phones at any time. And I say, that's because I don't consider it work, I just consider it part of my life.
Yeah.
I have a little saying that says, I'm always working and I'm never working. It's just my life. My personal and my business life come together. A lot of people don't understand that. They think that's terrible because they hate their business part of their life.
Yeah.
I don't hate the business part of my
Yeah.
life. And I see that in your video blogs. Tell us a little bit about how you found the earbuds, how you acquired them, that whole process, the shipping, the invoicing, those things, so people don't really understand the business side of it.
I buy them directly from a factory overseas. Initially, like I said, with kind of my evolution of the different products that I was buying and selling for, at the time, extra money, there's these websites like people a lot of now know in the US, Alibaba. One of the smaller sites that they operate is AliExpress. There's a site called dhgate.com, and these are sites where these overseas sellers list their products, and then you can peruse them. It's a lot like an Amazon or eBay, but they're all coming from overseas, and there's a somewhat of a purchase protection involved, so you don't PayPal or send off some money and they just walk away, because it's hard to police someone from that kind of miles away. What are you going to do, fly there and get your $100 back? So it's somewhat of an escrow service to help both parties stay honest. And then as I did that, then I got in contact with some sellers, and then eventually try to, as most businesses do, cut out whatever pieces of the puzzle that they can, pieces of the pie, the middleman with commissions and all that. So then I managed to connect with a seller there that works right with the factory. And then at this point, I pretty much just email him and then PayPal the money, and then the goods come in a couple weeks later. And then those, because there's the other thing which I think scares off people from trying to sell on Amazon, or especially Amazon Prime, is the packaging requirements. You have to have these products created, labeled just right, and then once you get into that thing again, you're extra concerned with the packaging, because then if they're packed wrong, someone like me who derives much of my income from Amazon, I don't say I live in fear, but I live in constant awareness that if they decide to punish me for whatever the reason may be, that's a serious impact on my life. So you pretty much bend over backwards for every Amazon customer every time, which I've learned is really not the worst idea to begin with business, but especially because the reach of customers is so much greater than it ever used to be. With any social media post that can have 1,000 views in an hour versus 20 or 30 years ago when that was wildly different. Then they'll get shipped off to the Amazon warehouses, and Amazon Prime, everything gets taken care of, and people order, and Amazon, as they call it, picks, packs, and ships the product, and then you get paid as a seller about a week to 2 weeks later. They pay every 2 weeks, so then they know when the sale takes place, then they ACH the money into your account.
Oh, wonderful. Now you said you talked about you started to do some direct marketing to schools.
I sure did.
So can you talk a little bit about how you developed that idea to do the direct marketing, how you do the direct marketing, and more importantly, I think, how you see your marketing evolving into the future?
That's a very good question. Initially, I actually owe a lot of this to, my wife has 4 brothers. One of them has been videoing right now. Another one is Chris, who's an assistant principal. And I had noticed that so many of the schools buying on Amazon, and then I went to him, who's in the education system, and I thought, what's the best way to get a hold of someone with the knowledge and authority to actually make these kind of purchases? And he goes, just email the principals, which I had thought mistakenly there would be always some secretary, some handler thing along the way filtering things out, like a junk mail thing, which is the case sometimes, but oftentimes not. So then I started looking online, and you can find these different ways. You can look at school districts, and they have a lot of times the personnel and staff directories. Some are hidden, some are just right there. So then you kind of say, oh, we have earbuds, 55 cents each, great for the testing requirements. You do that a lot don't respond, just like anything else, but a lot do. And then that was the beginning. Then as that evolved, and email marketing still works really well. Another step that we've started doing is going to these principal conferences. Most states have at least 1 or 2 principal associations of some kind, and they tend to have a conference once or twice a year. So my wife, who's an excellent salesperson, her and I go to these conferences and just interact face to face with these principals and assistant principals. And pretty much our whole marketing thing is earbuds and 55 cents each, 12 color options, and most of them right now are paying these incredibly absurd amounts of money for things. They say, no, we go to Dollar General and buy these for $1, which is great. But many of these districts need 500, 1,000, 2,000 sets of earbuds, and most places you go don't have 2,000 pairs of earbuds just sitting there on the shelf. Right. And with us, I have over 400,000 earbuds in stock across all the network of the Amazon warehouses. So if they need 10,000, 50, 100,000 tomorrow, that's something they can get at a price lower than what they're paying now. Once you get the information in front of them, it's an incredibly easy sell. The barrier is having, well, once again, the attention, whether it's email or face-to-face. People prefer that a whole lot more. But once the information's there, it's a really easy sale.
Well, one of the things I find interesting about you, and I think attracts you to Rachel and myself, is that you have a sense of abundance, not a scarcity mindset. We talk about this all the time. That's very evident in the fact that you're not only sharing what you do with us today, but you share it on social media all the time.
I do.
And a lot of people would say, well, wait a minute, I don't want to share all this stuff because somebody else is going to say, hey, I'm going to go buy some earbuds and try to sell them to school districts. What are your thoughts about that?
I think that as I've grown older and more self-aware, I've realized many people are good at very different things, and many people, you can make a bunch of money starting a bar and probably having a restaurant be a success, but it's rarely as easy as that. And many people will say, oh, that sounds neat, then go back to watching Netflix. And
right.
I follow, I don't know if you've heard of him, Gary Vaynerchuk. I follow a lot, yeah. And he'll say, and as I've gotten older, I used to be scared of the exact same thing, thinking I'm going to say this and someone's going to do the exact same thing as me, and why would I go and do that? At the same time, I don't, and he would say, you can tell people exactly what to do, how to do it, and 99.9% of people will never do anything. And the ones that will do it very well might not be able to execute in the same way as you already do, or have the resources to get in the game, because it did take me a couple of years as far as cash flow and inventory to build and build, because if some school district says I want 8,000 earbuds, most people don't have that many on stock, and then finding the place, because this was a 12-year progression of different channels to get to where I am right now. So I would say good luck. It's not an easy path. It's a lot of work. It's risk. It's time. And if you can do it, great, but I will probably outwork you and out-execute you.
Yeah. I don't know if you believe about energy passing from one person to the other, but just you having this abundance mindset, you don't even realize this, but I have a lot of educators as actual wealth clients.
Do you really?
And I also am really tied up to an organization here in St. Louis called Education Plus, which is a consortium of about 90 school districts in the St. Louis area. So I can say this right now on our podcast, I can put you in touch with many principals, and I would do that as a value-added service to them, and obviously for a value-added service to you. So just putting things out there to the universe, a lot of times you get good things coming back to you. So hey, tell us about what you see as far as innovation in the future. You've got to be laying in bed at night thinking, okay, I'm doing the earbuds, that's going pretty well, but what's the next thing on the horizon?
I think about that all the time. You're exactly right. The question I get a whole lot is with the Bluetooth, because lots of people have Bluetooth headphones and earbuds, and the wireless portion is great. My response to that is typically when the price comes anywhere close to the same, it's going to be something I really have to consider, because most people, you'd be lucky to find decent quality Bluetooth headphones for $5 on Amazon, and that's 10 times what the cost is if someone buys earbuds right now. So a school outfitting 500 students, that's $2,500 difference for the exact same thing in one thing, and schools are not exactly overflowing with money.
Right.
So I know that the earbuds are not, I'm not going to retire at 70 selling earbuds, I know that, and I probably got several good ripe years, because we go to these conferences, we were in Kentucky, and they're saying, oh yeah, we're just starting to buy Chromebooks for our classes. So we're still, even though it seems so established, the tablets and laptops with one-to-one, as all these schools are calling it, is still so ripe and new. So there's several years, and I think when the Bluetooth cost comes within a 2 or 3 multiple of earbuds, I do think about that. But I think about as my wife, as a stay-at-home mom, so I am the sole provider, I do think about that a lot. That's why I do try to be very aware of that and save and invest the money as best as I can to safeguard our financial future. And at the same time, I'm constantly pushing out new things. That's part of why I am starting I started a long time ago, 135 episodes in, a daily vlog. I do a series of car talks. Just a couple weeks ago, I started another more of a long form, strictly audio podcast, because I do think just like this, audio is so valuable because you can multitask and you can do something else while you listen. So I'm pushing that a lot, and I think that I'm consistently growing my personal brand as best as I can online and gaining followers and providing value. And a big part of me thinks, I don't know if it's the energy thing or what, but if I can use the really ripe times now to try to build long-term type returns, something that might not pay out for 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years down the road, because I always say I play long-term, I play super long-term, not long-term. And if I can do that, that's only going to open up doors for me for whatever the next venture may be. And probably ideally, I think like personal brand, to be my authentic self. If there's something that can connect or provide value for people, that's something that can never be outsourced or taken away, because that's my unique selling proposition of being who I am. And I never really stop. I think I've realized I have a growth mentality. My wife's like, "What? We have the earbuds. Why do we have to do something else now?
Right.
And you're going places for podcasts. You're doing all this." I'm like, "Yeah, I am," because that's kind of the only way I know how to be. And I think in the past when I've tried to not be that, it's just been so hard on me and those around me. And that if I can just continue to start new things and grow things, it makes me happy. And I think the other good byproduct is it tends to yield results more than it doesn't.
Yes, yes. I have something that I say to our listeners all the time, is we're trying to talk to people that are entrepreneurs, not just business owners.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times people don't know the difference. I think business owners are people that do get stuck in providing a good or service for a particular aspect of society, but there are oftentimes, it's in a grind. They're oftentimes the lowest paid person in their business,
Mm-hmm.
because they don't constantly innovate.
Yeah.
They don't constantly look for other ways to do their goods or service better for society. And that's how I delineate between a business owner and an entrepreneur. An entrepreneur is really looking to provide not only his or her good or services in a better way, but they also may be doing it in a more efficient way for the entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
But then they are always looking for another good or a service to provide society, to either make a person's life easier or make it more fulfilling for that particular person. Now you mentioned Gary Vee. I follow Garrett Gunderson a lot, and he always says he tells people to be creators, not just consumers.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what you're doing here. Is you're trying to figure out how you can just continue to create value.
Yes.
One thing you had mentioned was about retirement, and I've done this a lot. I've probably sat across with my wealth company. I've sat across the desk like we're doing here in 4,000 appointments.
Wow.
And
It's a lot.
what I notice is that the idea of retirement was actually brought about by the actual financial services industry and our government. When you think about it, before 1935, when Social Security was actually established, people didn't even have this concept of retirement. They just kept working in their lives, creating value for their families. I believe the financial services industry has actually done this to actually get people to take their own money and keep transferring it to the financial services industry.
I believe that.
Yeah, and we're trying to get people to start thinking more like entrepreneurs. We're talking about everybody, even if it's somebody that's working at a McDonald's as a manager. What other thing can that person do in their lives to continue to add value on the side,
Mm-hmm.
and to continue to try to have some passion for something else that they are doing, so that this retirement, this traditional retirement, never really happens. They just keep adding value. They just keep willing to get up at 5:15 in the morning,
Mm-hmm.
because they love to have that kind of spirit of passion to help people. One of the things that we're going to talk about later on in our podcast, and I'm going to just briefly talk to our listeners about this, and maybe you can add this. There was a time you have an X amount of revenue right now. I don't know if you know what that is, or if you want to share it, you can share it here in a second. But there was a time when that was down here, and now it's here, and now I guess sooner or later you can see it being here, and then there, and that's called a 10 times mind expander kind of way of thinking about entrepreneurship. So let's say your revenue was at that $20,000 2 years ago, and now it's at 200,000. That's 10 times. You have to ask yourself as an entrepreneur, what did I do in that 2-year period to increase my revenue 10 times? I'm sure you know some of the things that you've done to increase that. So could you share a few of those things?
The main things, it's kind of a trifecta of marketing. One is email, which kind of get everything spurred. 2 is those principal conferences. 3, I also do a lot of Facebook marketing because it's such a good way to market. The data is so clean, you can target exactly who you're advertising to. Like, there's not many platforms in the world you can say, I want to target a 20 to 30-year-old female in St. Louis, Missouri that likes badminton. There's not that many platforms that you can effectively do that, and from the sales portion, track exactly what they buy and how much they spent. There aren't that many ways to do that, so I'm a big proponent of that too, because then you can look at the exact cost of acquisition for each customer with the Facebook. So those are really the 3 areas that are going right now. And about the other long-term effect is some customers are acquired at a loss, like a lot of industries, but knowing that there's a 50% chance they're probably going to buy next year, or a lot of schools buy like spring and fall, or twice a year they'll buy, knowing that they're going to buy again. If you have to pay a little more to get them that first time, it's still better than not having them at all.
So now we're at, and these are fictitious numbers, but now we're at the 200,000 level, so the next 10 would be a $2 million level of revenue. Have you been thinking about some of the things you might have to do to grow your revenue to that level?
I do think about that sometimes.
You haven't implemented them yet?
Well, a lot of it takes care of itself because people do tend to reorder. So it's pretty easy to tell with the ordering system and all the different, the e-commerce site and everything, to tell who is a new versus a repeat customer. And many of the customers are new customers, and I know from historical data, which is pretty accurate, that they're a good chance they're gonna order again, so that's a big part of it. And a lot of times, schools are part of a district. There might be 5, 10, 20 schools inside of a district, and one school gets them because one particular principal saw it, and they might order for the whole district. The next time I see that pattern frequently, they might buy a small order kind of as a test to see what it's like, if they like it or not, then they come back again. And a lot of people I have found tend to know other like-minded or similar situational people. So one principal very well might have several principal friends, and like any goods or service product, word travels, and you get referrals along the way too. So a lot of that is kind of organic. I still will continue to push with the conferences, the email, the Facebook sales, but at this point it's snowball-ish, where the word's spreading quickly on its own. And at this point, I don't know the exact word, and believe it or not, I've never taken a business class in school, but the work to actually have it all work behind the scenes, get the inventory in and packed and up and out kind of thing, that's the other part of the scale. And like I bring in another employee, my second employee in February, so there's that side of it. Mostly just the scale of the actual packing, because having the sales there is one thing, but say some huge district orders half your inventory, and then you can't have them wait 3 months for something that's all messed up, because that's going to be a one-time only sale if that's the case. So having it's a constant growth, because if you're ever looking to sell on Amazon, especially Amazon Prime, the better it is stocked, the better you will sell, because they have the network of warehouses. And I don't know if people that have bought on Prime, even if it's 2 days, sometimes it'll take 2 or 3 or 4 days. It'll say additional days of processing, which only makes people not want to buy again or not buy in the first place. So the better you have your stock, the better you're going to sell. So I don't know if it's the chicken or the egg comes first, but I mean you need the sales to justify the inventory, and high inventory to get the sales. So it kind of feeds back and forth. So that's the other things that have to get done, is continue to grow the amount of inventory and people to process the inventory and the sales.
Yeah, I'm a big follower of Dan Sullivan. He's a life and business coach, and he talks about hitting a ceiling of complexity, so that you ramp up your sales or your service, and you only get you get to such a ceiling, and you can't break through that ceiling. And it's kind of what you were talking about. Do you hire more employees? But you can't really hire them yet because you don't have the sales to justify it. Or do you wait till the sales can justify it? But then as you're waiting, your customer service is going down, so because you don't have enough employees. And so what ends up happening, you keep bouncing up against that ceiling, and people keep saying, "Why I can't justify employees yet because I haven't broken through the ceiling." But he says you're never going to break through the ceiling because you don't have enough employees to keep the sales up. And this is I think one of the most difficult things for an entrepreneur to make that decision.
I do have thoughts on that because I don't remember the exact numbers, but I had seen something on TV talking about Sam Walton when Walmarts were starting, and I think it was like the 5th or 10th Walmart being built, and at that point Sam Walton was something like $5 or $10 million in personal debt as these were going, but of the same similar mindset, knowing that if every store nets about this much money, eventually it will catch up to itself. If you're making, say, $1,000 a day, yes, maybe you have to spend 50 grand a month to build a store, but eventually that curve will catch up to itself and outpace itself. And that's the same situation that I find myself in, because I know where sales are at, and Amazon makes it very clear to see, and the rest of the bookkeeping. So it's not so much, could there be another employee now? Yes, but a lot of it is making it make sense. And part of why I think I'm able to get to the point I have so far is not spending dollars where they don't need to be spent, and trying to spend them where they do need to be spent. And if one person can do the work sufficiently for now, then why would the other person come in? I mean, that's why that is strategic next in the spring, because we're moving and have a different dedicated space for the business, and the spring, like March, April, is the craziest time with the sales, so that's all kind of strategic to be ready for those increases.
So have you got this new space picked out?
Yeah, we have a house picked out in Fairview Heights, and the current owner is there. They're building, so we're moving in about February when their new house is completed being built. And it was hard because the house we're in now, which we love, initially was meant to be our forever house. And then we had our second kid, and then when that happened, and when we were pregnant with the second child, we finished the basement and over doubled the usable square footage of our house when you take out bedrooms and kitchens and stuff like that. And then like 2 months later is when the business exploded and kind of commandeered most of that space. And then to try to find a place that was suitable in the area, kind of, because we're somewhat near our family, which is nice to find babysitters. That's something that we tell people that we're close is, oh, I'd love to have a sitter all the time. But there aren't that many houses, because I realized I do like working from home, but at the same time, my wife and I both wanted a dedicated space for things. So this house, which it worked out funny because my wife knew the owners back in high school and hung out with their daughter and their son, and then they're friends on Facebook. And one day randomly, my wife had said, "Oh, they got this beautiful house with separate garages. You would love it. It's got two-car garages." And I thought, that sounds perfect. And I got a separated space. And then a couple weeks later, the wife at that house puts a random message on Facebook, "Does anyone know a good realtor?" So of course, my wife, she jumps at that chance. And then it all sounded too good to be true, because we kind of had to wait with the mortgage qualification things, the 2 years of returns. Oh, yeah. They had to build, so it almost sounds too good to be true. Like, wait, they're gonna wait for us to qualify, and that's too good to be true. But it turns out that it actually is, because they can save their realtor commission, so that's of course substantial on houses, and it worked out almost too good to be true. And now, about 4 months, 3.5 months till closing.
Well, I actually understand the mortgage industry all too well, so I understand the pain you were going through about the 2 years of returns. What are some of the greatest lessons you think you learned over the last 2 years?
The greatest lessons, You have to match your work ethic to your ambition. And that if you look at most people that are self-made with some degree of success, they have worked really hard, probably for years, probably for a decade, to achieve where they're at right now. Because I realize that some people, like in my immediate circle, see, working from home, wife stays home, they're looking to get this house, this whole thing. And while all that is true, they also didn't see that I was, for pretty much the entirety of my marriage, I've been married 7 years, staying up, working on a side business after she was asleep, getting up before she was awake for years and years and years. And even now, once you get to that place, it just becomes even more, because when it changes from your extra money to your main money, you have to take it that much more seriously. So it's a lot of work. You mentioned earlier about viewing a business, and I heard it one time a long time ago, and I find it so true, that having a business is like having a child. There's never a day I'm not a parent. There's never a day I'm not a business owner. And that your priority shifts from day to day. Something is sick or needs attention, or they're at a sitter, or maybe we go on vacations to try to help clear our minds. But I'm never really fully away.
Right.
And I'll be sitting on the couch with watch TV at night, and I'll answer some email or something like that, or research some other idea I've been thinking about. And that's just kind of what I do. But I've realized as I've gotten older that that's really my hobby. And some guys love sports and will look up the baseball team, the football team, and all these things, and that's never really been much of interest to me. Instead of looking up how the Cardinals did or some analysis of a lineup, I'll look up, what's this investment here? They say to max out Social Security for this, or how can I drive my costs down a different box, or all these things. And I realize it's kind of my hobby, which I've been able to harness into a business.
Sounds like you could use the same model that I have. You're always working, but you're never working, because I can see the joy in your face as you talk about being on the couch and just researching things.
Yeah.
So I think finally, is there any one thing that you want to share with our listeners about how to make sure that they enjoy their life while they're building a particular business? How do you try to meaningfully do that?
To enjoy your life while you meaningfully build it, I would say you have to, I'm a big proponent of reverse engineering what you want. So if you know there's a particular goal you want financially or a business, then you can make step-by-step goals to know where you're going along the way, and that kind of helps temper you a little bit. If you have a goal to get a certain amount of growth, a certain amount of work or something done, then it allows you a little bit to maybe not work as hard, or do that extra step along the way. And just you got to really find what's important to you, because reality is, in my opinion, that's a contradiction right there. In my opinion, the life of an entrepreneur is not for everyone. Many people are probably happier, clock in at 8, clock out at 5, couple softball leagues, go to the movies on Friday night, a couple of vacations a year, and they're very happy with that. And some people are not happy with that, and some people would probably not be happy with my lifestyle. And who's to say what's right or wrong?
Right.
I would say just try to be honest with yourself, and that's part of why I do the vlog, to show the honest side of
Right.
what it is my life is like. I'm not on private jets places. I'm not. I do want to buy a Lamborghini someday, but in a few years. But it's not just all the glamorous
Right,
side.
right.
There's work and work and work, and then work some more, and realizing what you're getting yourself into, because not everybody is wired for this or wants this, and that's perfectly fine too. Gary Vee always talks like the top 20th person at Facebook probably makes 5 times what I'll ever make, and they clock out at 5.
Right.
So it's knowing what you want, really. Knowing what you want, and I think as you get older, it's easier to tell what you want, what you don't want. But know what you want, and then put the steps in place to take that. And know that nothing in life is free. Most people that make a lot of money put in a lot of hours. It's just kind of the reality, in my opinion. And right or wrong, some people are happy to, like I said, clock out at 5 and scrape together for 2 vacations a year, or 2 weeks in Florida. And if they're happy, who's to say that's not the best path?
Yeah, that's great advice, thanks.
That's right. Yes. I don't think I have.
I'll see. I may have. Yeah, I may actually have a copy in my car. I may give you one if I have a copy.
Not especially. The main thing I always tell people is just Google Tyler Douthit. It's pretty much Tyler Douthit on all the handles. TYLER DOUTHITT. So if you're looking, the live version, so to say, of what I call the TD grind, which I named that with the daily vlog, you can see that on story on Instagram at Tyler Douthit or on Snapchat at Tyler Douthit, the number 1 on the end. They completed the ones I upload every night, but you can connect on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, whatever particular cup of tea is. Tyler Douthit, and also starting a new podcast on the Tyler Douthit channel on iTunes, Stitcher, and SoundCloud.
Well, that's great. We definitely want our listeners to be able to follow you and see your story as it unfolds. For our listeners, you can also find us at themoneyadvantage.com, where you can subscribe to our podcast, join the Money Advantage community, and get emails about our podcast, blogs, videos, and tools that will be helpful for you. From our website, you can also find and follow us on social media such as Facebook and YouTube.